Hello, I'm Andrew Pritchard. Thank you for watching today's Canada Regional Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, a snapshot look at the next 10 days here, with temperatures here, the first 5 days on the left and the next 5 that follow on the right. We're going to be shifting from a near average pattern here and dealing with a little bit of heat towards the early to middle part of the week. And you're seeing kind of a combination here where you see a transition from warm in the north to cooler in the south. That's because we'll have a bit of a cooler air mass here to get things started this weekend, but we'll quickly transition to a hot and dry pattern as we head into mid to late next week. Beyond that, the jet stream goes into a bit of an alignment like this with a ridge toward the west and troughing overall over the eastern half of the United States. And that's going to keep things fairly active here as we get towards the end of next week into the last few days of July, bringing shower and thunderstorm activity back into the region, keeping temperatures near average, but that is, of course, well off into the future. Over the next week, the best precipitation chance is going to be found here across parts of northern and central Alberta, and then kind of in a corridor here through central Saskatchewan and central Manitoba here. Southern portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba especially going to be remaining dry here overall over the next week or so. Again, with the best chance for more significant precipitation hanging out back here, and we'll talk about that in detail here in just a moment. So here's the jet stream as we wake up on Friday morning. Let me go ahead and jump back here and the flow across North America. And this is what we see, those fast jet stream winds across the Canadian prairies here with broad ridging over the eastern two-thirds of the United States. And that kept things hot over the Midwest, the central and eastern United States, dealing with a bit of a heat wave here. And with the active jet stream winds here across the Canadian prairie, that's what's kept showers and storms and in some cases some severe weather in the forecast here across the Canadian prairie. Over the next 48 to 72 hours, though, we're having a big shift across North America now, digging a trough over the western Pacific, or the Pacific coast of western Canada and the northwest, going into a ridge over the western half of the U.S. and Canada, with troughing over the eastern half of the United States. That's going to allow some heat to build here into the Canadian prairies and also bring some cooler temperatures into the Great Lakes and parts of the central and eastern U.S., bringing relief from that heat. But this also kind of shuts precipitation down here for at least 3 to 4 days here. We'll keep showers and storms in the forecast, at least in isolated nature here Friday and Saturday. Kind of shut things down overall Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then in some cases through Wednesday as we deflect rain chances off to the north with the flow of the jet stream. But I'll show you where we're headed, though, as we head into the mid to late portions of the week, as this trough begins to move onshore and brings thunderstorm chances once again to the Canadian prairies here at the end of next week. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the evolution here with the long-range European model, and we'll go ahead and we'll step through time with this one, taking it all back to Friday morning. Here's where we see the broad ridge over the eastern two-thirds of the U.S., troughing over the Canadian prairie, and again, that is what has kept us active here over the last several days with thunderstorm chances and isolated severe weather in some instances. So we'll play this out. We'll get into the weekend now, going into the back half of the weekend. Let me take the drawing off. By the time we get to Tuesday, here's where we're really seeing this start to amplify. We're seeing this ridge now over the Canadian prairies, bringing heat in here, kind of shutting down the precipitation forecast over the next 3 to 4 days. So this is a hot pattern, and this is a dry pattern across the Canadian prairies, but it doesn't hold on forever. Let me take the drawings off and let's go through the end of the week. We're on Tuesday now, so definitely hot and dry to start off the week across the Canadian prairies. But then as we head into now Wednesday and Thursday, here we go. Here comes the little wild card, breaking down this ridge, or at least sliding it over the top of it, and this will bring the chance for rain and thunderstorms back to the region, especially across central and northern Alberta, but then again along this corridor here through central Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well late next week. I don't want to get too far into the details here because we are talking about 6 to 7 days out in the future, but this is what breaks that down and keeps it from being a more prolonged heat wave across the Canadian prairie and keeps it from drying out too much. But this is also why portions of southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba really going to be dry for the next 4 to 5 days here as things are kind of shut down over the axis of that ridge. Looking at temperatures, the forecast here, you'll see the fluctuation here and why we get mixed signals from the overall when we looked at the 5-day temperature anomaly forecast, and it was kind of near average. Well, we're certainly starting off cooler than average to begin the weekend across a big chunk of the Canadian prairies here on Friday morning. Seeing cooler temperature anomalies across central and southern Alberta and Saskatchewan. As we play this out, now we're watching a front sink through the region. This is what is taking that hot and humid air mass out of the region with it. So certainly cooler Saturday, cooler than average for a lot of folks on Sunday as well, but by Monday, we're starting to bring that heat back in underneath that ridge. So it'll start in Alberta as we get into Monday and then spread from west to east there. And then by the time we get into here Tuesday, Wednesday, really looking at some hot conditions across the Canadian prairies and dry in terms of precipitation as the jet stream ridges over the area. Now here comes the trough. Now we're seeing cooler temperature anomalies make their way in through the Pacific Northwest. By the time we get into the end of the week now, Thursday and Friday, if this storm system arrives as advertised, that kicks the warmer temperature anomalies off to the east. So it's a bit of a temporary warm-up or heat wave, if you want to call it that, across the Canadian prairies that lasts for 3 to 4 days. So again, just recapping, that's why we see a mixed signal from the next 5 days of temperature anomalies. It's because we start off cool. We transition to a warmer pattern here Tuesday, Wednesday, and then for Thursday, if you were talking about eastern areas. So, and then as we get to the end of the week, this next storm system comes in, bringing cooler temperatures, cloud cover, and precipitation for the mid to late portions of the week. We'll look at the forecast CAPE, convective available potential energy. This, again, the instability, the fuel that drives our thunderstorms. We're looking at the potential for a severe weather outbreak across parts of the upper Midwest of the United States here, where you see those high instability values. But let's click through time. The reason I'm showing this is because we're watching the air mass that has kept at least meager instability across central portions of the region here, bringing, again, the potential for isolated thunderstorms, isolated strong storms over the last few days, and certainly for the afternoon on Friday, begins to get pushed off to the south and out of the region. As we're looking at Monday now, Tuesday, really shutting things down across this region. And again, that's another reason why we're seeing this break in the shower and storm activity across a big chunk of the Canadian prairies. Now, as we get into early to mid next week, that next trough begins making its way into the region. We're seeing high instability values forecast once again across a big chunk of Alberta by Tuesday evening. So starting from west to east, rain begins to be reintroduced to the region. So Tuesday, seeing storms back in the forecast across Alberta, and then this begins to move from west to east. Thursday now, again, if this, the details are of course subject to change on the timing and the location here, but this would make me think severe weather and thunderstorms from central Alberta into central and southern Saskatchewan on Wednesday of next week. And then this continues to push off to the east. Now we're talking about severe storms, showers and storms being most plentiful kind of in this region. I switched to white by accident here. In this region here from central and southern Manitoba into central Saskatchewan. So maybe Tuesday, rain most plentiful. Well, let's go ahead and we'll just look at the precipitation forecast here. I don't need to give it to you through the instability forecast, though I'd be happy to. As we look at the precipitation type forecast here, again, showers and storms along this frontal boundary expected Friday evening, Friday afternoon and evening. Going to be isolated to scattered in nature, isolated strong storms possible. That boundary sinks off to the south Saturday afternoon now, kind of along the U.S. border, so still from southern Alberta into central and southern southern portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Widely isolated showers and storms possible before we really shut it down. Here's Sunday, keeping it dry on Monday, and then now we're getting to Tuesday. Remember, this is when I said maybe isolated strong storms across the Front Range here, parts of Alberta, and then beginning more in earnest as we get into Wednesday, seeing significant precipitation being forecast across a big chunk of Alberta, getting into central Saskatchewan now on Wednesday, and then this thing begins to wrap up and move off to the east. So Thursday now, widespread showers and storms possible across the entire Canadian prairie. We're really going to be favored in that corridor from central Alberta through central Saskatchewan and then into central Manitoba, with southern portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba drier overall, kind of missing out on the heavier opportunities as it stands with this one's current forecast. But then keeping the possibility for storm systems every 3 days, bringing showers and storms back into the forecast across the region. So again, it's maybe a 3-day hot and dry pattern across the Canadian prairies before we kind of resume showers and thunderstorms and rainfall chances across the Canadian prairies. Looking at the total accumulated forecast then, this model run came in last night, so some of what you're seeing here beginning Friday afternoon is what was forecast to happen Thursday night into early Friday morning, so some of that already has accumulated. We'll go ahead and play this out, and the corridor is going to be very obvious from this map here. As we get to the end of next week, We'll start it off, we'll go through time showing you what accumulates here before we get to the end of the weekend and shut things down. This is, of course, the region where rain and thunderstorms are going to be most common Friday and then potentially early Saturday before that front clears the area. But now getting all the way through to Tuesday and not seeing much change. It's Tuesday evening and Tuesday night. We start to see the precipitation begin accumulating again in parts of Alberta, and then spreading from west to east with that storm system through the end of the next week. But you can certainly see the corridor, the most favored corridor for heavy precipitation, going to be in this region here, parts of British Columbia into central portions of Alberta. But overall, increased rainfall chances in this corridor here through central Saskatchewan and central Manitoba. We'll zoom in, we'll play the total accumulated precipitation forecast here for Alberta and just let it play through the end. And there you see the opportunities for some significant precipitation here across primarily central portions of Alberta, getting into northwestern portions of Alberta. But this corridor here really seems to be favored for some potentially significant precipitation, especially during the middle portions of next week. The high temperature forecast, we're starting off a bit cooler here in the mid to upper teens across a big chunk of Alberta here, lower teens in parts of south central Alberta, single digits even here on the front range here. As we get into the day on Saturday, warmer in the upper teens across a bigger chunk of the province of Alberta here. And then the heat up still really begins. The warm up begins in earnest here as we get into early next week. So Sunday, high temperatures, and then Monday, and then Tuesday, getting into the mid to upper 30s across southern Alberta. This is where it's been fairly dry over the last week or two, and where it looks fairly dry continuing on into next week. Again, the favored region for some heavier precipitation right in here, but drier and hotter overall across southern portions of Alberta, especially as we get into early to mid next week. We'll pivot over here to the east. We'll look at Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Same story here. This model run came out last night, and so I've got it beginning here Friday afternoon. We've already got some precipitation accumulating across central portions of the regions. But let's go ahead and we'll play this out through the end. And there's where you see the impacts, then the added rainfall potentially from that storm system mid to late next week. Really favoring that corridor here through central portions of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Drier overall off to the south, drier overall off to the north. So we look at the high temperatures here for the next 5 days, the mid to upper teens, broadly speaking, lower 20s for the day on Friday. Saturday, that front kind of clears the region. We're a bit cooler and drier overall, high temperatures in the really near 20 degrees. It would be a less humid air mass, but the warm-up begins then, as the same thing in Alberta, as we get into early to mid next week. Your Sunday high temperatures, Monday, and then certainly seeing that on Tuesday as we introduce upper 20s and low 30s to the region. As always, Eric Snodgrass will have an in-depth look at the evolution of the next 1 to 2 weeks in our Monday morning ag forecast video, and I'll have your next Canada regional forecast right here on Tuesday morning. Have a great day and a wonderful weekend.